have been introduced. The House comes to questions for oral answer. Question number 1, in the name of Metiria Turei.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker, tēnā koutou i te whare. My question is to the Prime Minister and asks, does he stand by his statement that, quote, I will lead a government that will govern for all New Zealanders, end quote?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, just with your indulgence and the members, I won't be giving an adjournment debate speech this afternoon, so can I just take a moment to wish you a very Merry Christmas, wish all the members of the House a Merry Christmas, safety for them and their families. In answer to the question from the member, the answer is yes.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. What then is his response to Chelsea from Auckland, who asks, Prime Minister, will you put a stop to mining fossil fuels and make a world-leading push towards sustainable energy?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, in answer to the question from Chelsea, the answer is no, we won't be stopping the mining of fossil fuels in New Zealand, but I'm proud to be one of the leaders that got together in Paris to support the fossil fuel subsidy reform, which will see hopefully a situation where countries will no longer actually be subsidising the consumption of those fuels, which sees a $500 billion spent in that area, with only 8% of that expenditure going to the bottom quintile. But New Zealand produces some fossil fuels, and if they frankly weren't bought from New Zealand, they'd be bought from other countries around the world.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. What is the Prime Minister's response to Donna from Christchurch, who asks, Prime Minister, will you support the legitimate expectation of Cantabrians to return to full democracy during the 2016 local body elections?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, what I would say is that the government is working towards a restoration of a fully elected council. I don't think that will be happening in 2016 from top of my mind. I think it's half appointed and half elected. The reason for that, of course, is that ECANS was suspended by the government, and I think rightfully so, because it was the worst performing council in New Zealand, 84th out of 84th. They had failed over many years, in fact decades, to get an operable water plan. And I think most people would actually say that the Commission of Work led by Dame Margaret Baisley has done an outstanding job. But we do look forward to democracy being reformed. We just hope that people will be elected to the new council of the quality of Dame Margaret Baisley.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
What is his response to Max from Porirua, who asks, Prime Minister, will you refuse to deal with Saudi Arabia and its abhorrent human rights record, stand up to Australia's disgusting treatment of asylum seekers and those detained on Christmas Island, and will you commit to human rights by permanently increasing the refugee quota?
Mr Speaker,
the Right Honourable Prime Minister.
There are many parts to that question, so let me just deal with the last part of it. Tomorrow, next year there will be a formal review undertaken, as occurs every so often, about the refugee quota undertaken by the government, and I wouldn't want to jump in front of that review.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
What is his response to Zoe from Wellington, who asks, Prime Minister, will you make a solid push towards pay equity for all genders, combat the high rates of domestic violence, and once again prove to the world, as we did in 1893, that in New Zealand, women are valued as much as their male counterparts?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, just say to the member that she's probably aware that the government is currently in negotiations with the unions, looking to try and find a way through the pay equity issues that were raised as a result of the Terra Nova case. Again, I wouldn't want to prejudge the outcomes of those, but the government is working constructively with the unions to try and find a way of addressing the concerns of the situation prior to it actually having to be referred back to the courts.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
What is the Prime Minister's response to Charlotte from Auckland, who asks, Prime Minister, for 2016, I want to save the last 45 Maui dolphin before it's too late. So will you please rethink your position on this matter and extend the Maui dolphin's habitat?
The
Mr.
Right Honourable
Speaker,
Prime Minister.
well, what I would say is that the government's already extended the habitat as we can get the best scientific advice on Maui dolphins, but there has been no scientific advice to support further extension. If there was, the government would act.
Entry.
Supplementary question, Metiria Turei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And what is his response to Olive from Waikanai, who asks, Prime Minister, will you have a nice Christmas? Will you have a nice Christmas, asks Olive, and reflect on a warrant of fitness for rental houses, a living wage, no child going hungry, a much greener New Zealand, and tougher penalties for polluting the environment and for people ill-treating and abusing children and animals?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, in answer to the first part of the question, I think I'll have a lovely Christmas. Of course, I'll miss the member in particular, but I'm sure we can correspond with one another via text or something and make sure we're enjoying the celebrations we deserve.
Supplementary question. Order. Supplementary question. David Seymour.
What is the Prime Minister's response to Aroha from Kawerau, who asks, why can't the Prime Minister confront the sustainability of New Zealand's superannuation and allow us to have a discussion about raising the age?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, well, I say to Aroha, given she is 64 and a half and about to turn 65 in early 2016, I'm not going to whip the rug out from underneath her like I would with any other New Zealander so nearing the retirement age.
Supplementary question, David Seymour.
What is the Prime Minister's response to Fred from Tikawiti, who complains that the tax on capital is one of the highest in the OECD for New Zealand firms seeking capital from overseas, and asks, can that rate be dropped progressively to the same rate as the Maori Authority rate of 17.5%?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I say to Fred, no, that's very unlikely, and he should go and see his neighbour, Jim Bolger, who is always much better at answering those more difficult questions.
Question number 2, Alistair Scott.